Yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Good, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs. As my colleague, our good friend from Maryland, just noted, this administration claims they don't have the resources or the manpower to secure the border because, MAGA Republicans, conservative Republicans haven't given them those resources, but yet as Texas has tried to stand in the gap and do the job that the federal government won't do, they're suing and fighting, literally trying to prevent Texas from securing the border. Just yesterday, we had 14 Democrats vote with every Republican to condemn, denounce, and call for an end to the president's open border policies, the president's border invasion. So we had the opportunity then to try to attach border security today to the government funding bill, to use the leverage of the government funding to secure the border. I saw a poll today that shows a majority of registered voters, not Republicans, mind you, a majority of registered voters support shutting down the government in order to secure the border. Yet we voted today to continue to give billions of dollars to Secretary Mayorkas to continue to facilitate the border invasion, and frankly to give millions of dollars to the UN, who's literally using the resources we give them to coach illegals on how to cheat our asylum system. We must not even consider the Mayorkas-Lankford deal, which is worse than doing nothing. It's worse than doing nothing to give the false sense of border security, to give political cover to those who are literally facilitating the border invasion, for those who would call it a deal, a good border deal, to allow 5,000 illegals a day before they start to try to prevent those above 5,000, to put no limits on parole, which would allow Mayorkas to allow anyone else he wants to illegally come into our country, and to give work permits to those who are here illegally now. That is literally worse than nothing. The American people deserve nothing less than genuine, true border security, and we ought to have the resolve to deliver that for them. And I yield back to the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, how much time is left?
The gentleman has 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just want to point out real quickly, parole. You mentioned parole. Parole by statute is meant to be on a case-by-case humanitarian administrative remedy. This administration has granted parole to more than 1 million people. Now, what parole does, it actually gives you a work permit, and you're supposed to be here, you got a relative that needs surgery, you're going to be here for 2 weeks, extraordinary. Before Biden, about 15 a year. This administration, over 1 million. And I also want to talk about CBP, because those line agents are working their tails off. They're doing everything they can, but they're being undermined by Secretary Mayorkas and this administration. I have been down there many times and talked to them. Their morale is so low. They want to enforce. But like in Eagle Pass, in Lukeville, both places I've been, once you get away from the crowd where they're processing, you can drive along the border for miles. We drove along Lukeville literally for miles. And the only people we saw was the guy in charge of rebuilding the fence and the hundreds of people that were walking along the border road who had come through those holes illegally. We need to use our lever. The founders gave it to us. It is the most effective. I urge our colleagues to reconsider as we go forward, using that lever to prevent this administration from avoiding its duty to enforce our border security. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank my colleagues for coming down, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.